Welcome everyone to this Privacy Rules Privacy Espresso. My name is Alessandro Di Mattia, Legal and Executive Officer at Privacy Rules. Privacy Espressos are very short and quick updates where we discuss with our experts worldwide on the most recent news or the laws related to privacy and data protection. I'm very pleased today to introduce you to our guest, that is Oksana Zadniprovska from the law firm Axon.Partners based in Ukraine. They are brand new members of our alliance, so it's a real pleasure to have them with us today. And the reason of the recording is, of course, to receive an update on which is the regulatory framework there, because there is business that is moving and there is still, laws that we need to comply with, even if there is a difficult situation there. So for this reason, I think it's really important to have an expert that provide us with some insights on what's happening and how to move and what to look at. So Oksana, thanks a lot for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to be here.
Thanks a lot. And okay, let's move forward with the topic of today. So can you provide us with an overview, which are the main laws there, and is something moving, and are they similar to the best practice that we know, in particular, for example, in Europe with GDPR?
So basically in Ukraine, there is no some kind of framework which is similar to the GDPR. So we do not have this extraterritorial law which is applicable to foreign businesses, but we have basic law which was adopted in 2010. It is called the Law of Ukraine on Personal Data Protection, and it actually provides for basic principles of data processing, the definitions of controllers, processors, data subjects, and consent, and they deal with the rights of data subject and the rules on sharing and transferring data, as well as the general powers of our data protection authority. So there is a law. And this law actually provides for a lot of obligations on the controllers, such as the privacy notices and collecting proper consents and ensuring data subject rights and the security of personal data. So I would say that, it is more harsh to state authorities and to usual controllers, or to the controllers who process sensitive data, than the ordinary controllers. And it provides for basic obligations which are a little bit similar, which we are used, I would say, in the privacy world. But it is not that harsh as the best practice. I would say it is older and more similar to the directive of the EU, more than to the GDPR or the LGDP. So there are other laws in Ukraine also which deal with privacy in different spheres. Let's say there is the law on electronic commerce, which deals with the questions how the consent could look like for e-commerce platforms, or how the advertising should look like of the products of such companies. We also have the law on electronic communications, which deals with which applies to only the providers of such services, like telecom operators or network providers, cloud services. So it deals with the same obligations, like the security of their systems, as well as the direct marketing. And we also have, for example, the law on the protection of information in information communication system, which requires certain players, such as state authorities or the processors, the controllers who deal with sensitive data, to ensure a certain level of protection. So basically, that's the framework.
Perfect, Oksana. Thanks a lot for this overview. And as it often happens, there is a set of laws that are interlinked to each other. So that's why it's always useful to speak with lawyers that knows not just one law, but the law in the country, because they need to know which are the activities of the business, so that they can tailor the policies and the activities in the right way and support the companies the best possible ways. We are discussing, in general about laws. Let's speak a bit about their implementation or their enforcement even more, because this is always a topic that is often relevant, because normally enforcement is also the best way to get the ball rolling and the companies to be compliant with them. So which is, the status in Ukraine under that perspective, and is there anything that is going to, any change that you see in the landscape?
I would say the main issue that you would have to know about Ukraine is that we have the Data Protection Authority, the commissioner, and the basic law, unfortunately, does not provide a lot of powers that such commissioner should have. That's why the enforcement perspective is, not so good as it is in other countries. However, We have some liability provisions in our law. For example, we have administrative liability, but for some violations, it's only up to 900 United States dollar fines. And we have criminal liability for breach of privacy right, and the fine is really low, but there is also a possibility of imprisonment for up to 5 years. And the commissioner, our data protection authority, it has like the power to check if the controllers, processors comply with their obligations, but also he can order to eliminate violation or draft a protocol on administrative offense. However, we don't have a lot of interesting cases in court, as the statute of limitation in administrative case, for example, is only 3 months, and it's hard to to follow this term. And basic law, I would say, is not strict, and the real enforcement is a big question. So for Ukrainian businesses which do not have like the EU companies or does not work in other jurisdiction which well have strict laws, privacy is usually, or unfortunately, is often not the priority task. But I think this is really bad because in general, the consumers' awareness is rising every day, and we have the situation with the EU when, well, we are getting closer and closer. Yeah. So I would say that the main tip for business in Ukraine would be you should comply not because of the fines, but you should comply because the compliance gives more trust from partners and from investors, and also because we have no other choice but in the nearest future to move closer to the EU standards in Ukraine. So it's just a matter of time when the fines will get bigger and the obligations get stronger. And as to your second part of your question, I would say that in Ukraine, the changes are coming soon. Our privacy history is really long because the law is like old. It's 13 years old already, and I was finishing school at that time. You know, a lot of time has passed from that, and the technologies are different now, and the privacy world, the law the law of privacy is like different now than it was in 2010. So we need to fit this situation. That's why in Ukraine, in 2021, there were actually 2 draft laws related to the data protection presented before the parliament. The first one was the data protection law draft, and the second one was about the independent authority. But now, well, it was the first one was not passed, but we have another draft law which is similar to that, and it is completely like closely based on the GDPR. It has high fines, it has strict liability, a lot of obligations which are really similar to those in the EU. Although it is hard to say when it will be adopted, Ukraine has certain obligations due to which its law should be closer to the EU. We have this official membership candidate now, so I sincerely hope that we're talking about the end of 2023 or at least the first half of 2024. But again, no warranties. It's just I hope.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's keep finger crossed on that. And that's extremely useful, by the way. And thanks a lot for these, in particular, because this is an approach that any, country that is still waiting for a new law to be implemented or a stricter law to be implemented, this is something that we are facing worldwide. Everyone is getting to focus more and more on privacy. So no matter how or when, we will have to comply with it. So better to get prepared as soon as possible. Of course, as you were rightly saying, GDPR at the moment is, the standard that probably your legislator is going to look at. So you already know, where to move, what to look at, and you have already a starting point. And another great point you were mentioning is the fact that technologies are developing everywhere. So of course there is the need for a new law. There is already someone complaining about GDPR that is not new enough. So, we are in an ever-changing sector, so always better to stay up to date and to be supported by someone that is really in the field as you are. So thanks a lot for updating us with this Privacy Espresso. It was extremely interesting, and thanks also to our audience for following us. So for anyone having business or need to implement the business in Ukraine or with Ukraine, I really invite them to contact Oksana Zadniprovska from the law firm Axon.Partners, and I really look forward to meet you and our audience with the next Privacy Espresso. So thanks a lot and have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thanks.